Hello guys, today we'll be analyzing A Doll's House, the play basically by Henry Ibsen. So if you're not familiar with the play, I do recommend that at least you have it next to you because we're going to be analyzing some quotes. But this is a deep analysis video, so if you haven't read the play or know at least what it's about, then you should probably familiarize yourself with the settings before starting with the analysis. So we're going to begin. So the setting of a doll's house is really, 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 really important throughout the text. So if you really get the essay about the setting, that's a really, really good prompt. So let's begin analysis. So basically, in Henry Ibsen's Dollhouse, the Helmer home serves as a microcosm that encapsulates the restrictive societal norms and values of the Victorian era, reflecting the broader microcosm of society. So basically, what this means is that the microcosm is basically the Helmer household, which is basically the microcosm because it represents one of the many households that had the same problems and the same things generally going on, as it reflects the themes of gender roles and whatnot. Because back then, women didn't really have their own autonomy; they didn't have as much rights as they should have. They were probably inferior in society. So this is just it just showcases that it's just a microcosm in a macrocosm. Within the confines of the domestic space, the characters navigate a web of societal expectations and personal desires that are deeply influenced by the era's patriarchal structure. So here you can really talk about patriarchy and how men were really dominant over women. They really decided and dictated the life, and women really didn't have a life path. They just had to be housewives and not rediscover themselves or have a personality or character or whatnot. They just had to follow whatever the patriarchal structure gave them to follow. So here you can talk about Torvald's patronizing personality or character and how he really controls every aspect of Nora's life and she has no room to breathe, basically. The Helmer home, with its doors and rooms, symbolizes the various boundaries and constraints placed upon individuals, particularly women like Nora, who are expected to perform specific roles as devoted wives and mothers. Outside the domestic sphere, the larger society looms, enforcing these norms through legal, moral, and societal systems that dictate behavior and status. The interplay between the Helmer household and the Victorian societal framework highlights how private life is governed by public law and cultural expectations. Okay, so basically, this is very important because when it comes to the law throughout the doll's house, or a doll's house, sorry, I keep calling it the doll's house. Basically, the laws did not permit for a woman to actually get a loan or do many things, but the main one is a loan because we do know that the laws in the society, they actually showcase the way that the society thinks, because laws showcase or reflect what's right or what's wrong, right? And in this case, it showcases that back then, part of the ideology was that women were not capable or not were not or like worthy of making these decisions, which ultimately gave them less power. But this is because there was the belief that women were inferior to men and women should not be able to make their own decisions, which is basically in today's world like children, because children there's many things they cannot do without the parents' consent. Well, back then there's many things women could not do without men's consent, or they couldn't even do it at all, which showcases that they really thought women had less of a maturity, women were not as smart. So this just shows in general how they really thought. um Okay, so this setting underscores the tension between individual autonomy and societal expectations. This is actually a very pivotal theme throughout the novel: individual anatomy and autonomy and societal expectations, because here you have the theme of individual versus society, illustrating the complex dynamics of conformity and resistance in rigidly structured society. The house symbolizes insignificance because there's a difference between a house and a home. A house is a place to take shelter and to live in, while a home is a place of love where family lives in harmony and understanding. So here we can really talk about several things. So first, A Doll's House, the title of the play itself really is a clever choice made by Ibsen. Now, if you're an IB student, or usually if you're any student just writing an essay, but specifically for IB, part of criterion B is to actually evaluate authorial choices. So here you can talk about how clever and systematic or strategic it is of Ibsen to actually talk about a doll's house, like the title, using this title, because he uses the word house. A doll also has a meaning, its own meaning, but a house, we're analyzing the setting now, that's why. A house itself is is different from a home, because a house is just a shelter, it's just a place to live in, whereas a home, it's a place where, like I just said, family lives in harmony and understanding. And this is the illusion that was at the beginning. So Nora was actually convinced that she was living in a happy household, and she was satisfied with her everyday life and her role as a mother, and she was convinced that she was doing this out of her own will. um so this just showcases the symbolism of the title, which we're gonna actually be talking about today on a deeper level. And we're also gonna be symbolizing the word doll. So yeah. So a house is an emotional object, where Nora is compared to, and she realizes by the end of the play that Helmer's house was never a home. It was an illusion. It was an illusion. Sorry, no, I replaced the A with the I. I'm sorry. Nora never succeeds in making the Helmer house a home due to Torvald's behavior. So basically, as much as Nora tried to make things work by hiding her secret or her secret, and by ensuring that Torvald never knows that she took a loan, which was actually a really selfless act to save his own life, in order to keep her family afloat and her domestic life afloat, which was actually her only life. Like she did not have a house. I'm sorry, she did not have a life outside her home, her house. So this is actually very, very important. Now we're going to be talking about microcosm and macrocosm on a deeper level. So the Helmer home, or the Helmer house, I keep calling it a home, but it's a house in fact, as more of a house than a home, symbolizing a space of performance and control rather than genuine emotion and warmth. This is very important, the words performance and control, because this whole time, especially at the beginning and like the first act, what Nora was trying to do was that she's actually trying to control the circumstances and her fate by actually ensuring that Torvald does not find out about her secret. Um, which actually showcases the manipulation, because here we can talk about the theme of deceit, as Nora's constantly trying to control her fate. She wasn't being genuine with Torvald, and it's actually very, very, very apparent throughout the play, as she literally starts hiding the fact that she's eating macaroons from her husband. So he's even dictating her diet, her everyday diet, which like demonstrates the lack of like autonomy she has, and just shows that she really does lack in individualism, because she really isn't in control of the little aspects of her own life. It's a place where Nora plays the role of the ideal wife and mother, adhering to the expectations imposed by her patronizing husband Torvald and society at large. This setting functions as a microcosm reflecting the broader societal norms that dictate strict gender roles. So we really need to talk about this, and I'm going to be talking about this more in depth throughout the video, is Torvald's personality. Torvald is a literal stark representation of the patriarchal ideology. So basically, everything that the patriarchy believes in and the patriarchy follows is what Torvald genuinely and truly believes in and encompasses. So basically, he truly is convinced by these laws and by these norms, and by these values, and he embodies them as an individual, he embodies them as a character, and he's that kind of makes him a victim, because he actually really can't come to the understanding that he's prioritizing society over the well-being of his wife. So this really and truly says a lot. So here we can talk about Torvald as an embodiment and as a symbol of the patriarchy. Um, the house, with its superficial harmony and underlying tensions, encapsulates the dynamic of power and subjugation that define Nora's life, highlighting the theme of gender roles. So the theme of gender roles is generally exhibited and highlighted through Nora and Torvald's relationship, because he's constantly, you know, dictating her life choices, and she's constantly in fear of him finding out. She keeps keeping secrets, which also like um depicts the theme of deceit. Society is a macrocosm. Society functions as a macrocosm of the Helmer household, with its overarching structures and norms dictating the dynamics within the home. The societal laws and expectations that govern behavior, particularly for women, are immersed in the restrictive environment of Nora's domestic life. Legal constraints, such as those that deem Nora's forgery illegal despite her altruistic intentions, highlight the rigid and unforgiving nature of societal rules that offer no space for moral nuance. Similarly, Mrs. Lynn's situation illustrates the economic challenges and the limited options for women. So here we're just talking about Mrs. Lynn. So basically, if you don't know what Mrs. Lynn has done, basically Mrs. Lynn is one of, and if not, only Nora's only like a close friend. And when Krogstad is threatening Nora that he will tell Torvald of Nora's the fact that Nora actually took a loan, an illegal loan. She tells Nora not to worry and that she will fix the problem for her because she has a past with Krogstad. They were once romantically involved or whatnot. So she does that, but in the end, but when she actually goes to talk to Krogstad, she does the complete opposite. She actually ends up encouraging Krogstad to actually tell Torvald, and this is because she ends up getting back with Roxette because she need as a woman in the patriarchal society throughout this setting, she actually is at a really, really, really inferior position if she does not have a man. She needs a man to support her. She needs financial support. She needs security. She needs all of these things that she needs in order to survive, because at that point women needed men to survive because again their autonomy was limited. They weren't really considered as individuals as much as men were. They didn't have as many rights. So that's why she actually did that. She didn't do that after out of malice or out of spite. She did that out of survival. So it just showcases the position women were in back then. These broader societal expectations are reflected in the microcosm of the Helmer household. Um, where Nora's roles and actions are scrutinized and shaped by the same patriarchal values. The macrocosmic influence that transforms the house from a potential space of safety and nurture into a combining structure that enforces societal norms, and the enforcer of the societal norms is Torvald himself, ultimately prompting Nora's realization that her home is not a sanctuary but a prison of societal expectations. Her decision to leave is a defiant rejection of the societal macrocosm that dictates her existence, making a profound critique of the structure that enforce restrictive gender roles and stifle personal freedom. So here we can just talk about Nora and how she is quite, she has her awakening, because I really don't want to talk about what I'm going to be talking about in the further slides because they have their individual analysis. But here I'm just talking about how Nora ends up realizing that instead of her home being an actual home, or in other words, a sanctuary, it's actually a prison because she's literally controlled. She can't really do anything. And this is shown by the fact that she keeps lying and keeping secrets in order to just control her fate and keep her like home life afloat. And also it's demonstrated by the doors as physical barriers, because literally there's so many doors in the house. Like if you just begin the plays, there like that's the beginning of the play, there's like 5 doors. So it just shows the physical barriers that Nora has to struggle with, and the fact that she's not allowed to enter many rooms in the house as well. Now we're talking about the doors as dual purpose. So I began with that before actually starting the analysis. So the doors have two purposes. They're restriction of movement and freedom. The doors within the house act as literal and metaphorical barriers to Nora. They represent the societal and marital boundaries set upon her, restricting her physical and emotional freedom. Each door that Nora cannot open or is discouraged from entering symbolizes a realm of life and decision making from which she is barred. Again, lack of autonomy. We can also talk about here individual versus society. Privacy and secrecy. Doors also symbolize the secrets and private lives maintained in the Helmer household. Nora's secret, her illegal loan, necessitates a constant vigilance of who enters which room, underscoring how doors can protect and imprison. So basically, here doors have like both, like in the first point, they have a literal and metaphorical meaning, and in the second one, they're just both a protection and imprisonment. Rooms as a confinement. Torvald's office, perhaps the most significant room that Nora is often excluded from, is Torvald's office. This space reflects the world of men and the power dynamics in their marriage. Torvald's office is where serious matters lie, the law, finances, and decisions affecting the entire family, and which is part of Nora's fate, which is she's constantly trying to control or handle. Nora's exclusion from this room symbolizes her exclusion from power and control over her own destiny. Living room as a stage, the main living area, which is which is much of the play's action takes place, because again, the protagonist of this play is Nora, and her life is basically set in a domestic setting, which it's basically the only setting in her whole entire life. functions almost like a stage where Nora plays the roles expected of her as a mother, wife, and charming hostess. This space is superficially public, yet it's here where the confines of her role are most acutely felt, as she must constantly perform to meet societal and familiar expectations. So now we're going to be talking about the dystopian domestic sphere. So basically, there's a facade of happiness because at the beginning of the play, we see Nora as a person who genuinely believes that they're happy, and she genuinely tries to keep her house hold afloat because she actually is convinced that she can do so and that she can continue this sort of happiness, in quotes, of course, that she's living. The Helmer home initially presented as a place of comfort and security gradually, reveals itself as a facade. The marriage between Nora and Torvald appears harmonious on the surface, but it's fundamentally dysfunctional. Torvald treats Nora as a possession or child rather than an equal partner, and this is actually like very like like relevant when he uses zoomorphisms and talks and refers to her with like these like nicknames such as Skylark or like my little bird, Fritter's so sweet, and whatnot. And he starts using like these like pronouns such as mine and whatnot, which showcase the same point, emphasizing the patriarchal dynamics at the play. This treatment is a reflective of the broader societal expectation that wives should be subservient and ornamental. And this is a very the word ornamental is very very important. We're going to be talking about the symbol of the Christmas tree later throughout the analysis. Control and surveillance. So Torvald's control over Nora from managing her every expense to dictating her diet and activities mirrors the broader societal controls imposed on women. This surveillance is not just a personal issue, but an institutionalized aspect of their society where women are defined financial and legal autonomy are denied financial and legal autonomy, much like Nora's 4G, which undertakes out of desperation but is legally powerless to address independently. Mirrors. In Ibsen's Doll's House, the mirror setting coincides with Nora's anagnorisis. Basically, if you don't know what the anagnorisis means, it's basically a sort of awakening where the protagonist comes to a sort of realization regarding her life. And this is done with Nora. Transformative realization about her constructed role within her marriage. The timing is not merely thematic, but serves as a crucial pivot in the narrative, symbolizing Nora's shift from a domestic confinement to self-awareness and agency. So basically, in the beginning, she was domestically confined. We talked about this a lot, so I'm not going to reiterate. But basically, by the end of the novel, she actually is self-aware of her role in life and the role dictated by society, also highlighting the theme of individual versus society and agency. The New Year, a symbol of renewal and beginnings, juxtaposes the crumbling facade of her marital relationship, highlighting the disparity between societal celebrations and the personal crisis. So it's really, really ironic, and it's actually like an ironic choice made by Ibsen because he ends up talking about basically the play begins with Christmas, which is basically a festive season full of joy and happiness. But here we know that Nora's literally having so many inner turmoils because of her secret, and she literally had to confide in Mrs. Lind, even though she could actually potentially get in trouble. But this is because of her emotional state. She really had to confide in someone. And also, New Year's is takes place because New Year's is right after Christmas, which is really ironic because this is right before Nora, or literally during Nora's anagnorisis, where she realizes her role in life. So it's the same as New Year, New Me, and this is the same for Nora. This convergent. Oh, sorry, I need to see where I was. As Nora chooses to leave her family, this festival period marks a radical departure from tradition and societal expectations. So we do know that, for example, Christmas is a tradition because it's like a celebration that takes place every year in the same date and same time. So it's the same thing. So basically, the fact that Nora does something that's literally radical from traditions ironic, reinforcing the play's critique of the rigid gender roles during the Victorian era. So it's also like a way of Ibsen to really criticize these traditions back then. This convergence of a personal epiphany during the New Year accentuates the play's thematic emphasis on liberation, making Nora's decision a powerful act of defiance against the oppressive structures of her time. So this is actually really, really good. So there's so much irony. So I really don't want you to get confused because I was really talking fast and talking about irony in general. So basically, it's ironic because Nora is having an neurosis, which is an awakening, which is in, you know, everyday slang, new year, new me, basically. And she ends up leaving and beginning a new journey, a new life with awareness, and she's aware of her own anatomy and agency. So here we can talk about how it's ironic that New Year's and Nora's new personality and new character takes place. And we can also talk about how it's ironic at the same time, because this is during the Christmas season, it's during the festive season, it's during New Year's. And these seasons, they're traditions. They take place every year. They represent joy, they represent happiness, but in reality, and they represent unity between the family. But in this case, Noah is actually leaving her family, and she's breaking these traditions, and she's breaking general tradition of the Victorian era. She's defying the social norms and social expectations. So here we can also talk about how it's ironic that she's doing the opposite, and this type of irony has to really it's a way basically of it can be like it's an implication. It can be like it implies that it's Ibsen's way of criticizing the norms, the societal norms and values of the Victorian era and patriarchy in general, like the patriarchal society. So now we're going to be talking about Nora's awakening, Nora's anagnorisis. So Nora's anagnorisis in Henrik Ibsen's A Doll's House reflects a significant ideological shift. This that changes that challenges the deeply ingrained societal norms and personal expectations of her role as a wife and mother. Now, the key word in this sentence is deeply ingrained societal norms. This is a key phrase because here we know that Nora, just as Torvald, maybe a bit less, was extremely convinced of the patriarchal structure, and she was following it not as blindly, but pretty much blindly, because she was convinced that she's happy, and she was doing everything in her power possibly to maintain her marriage and live this domestic life that she was already living. She just wanted to continue the life she was living at the beginning. This was her goal. Um, this realization fundamentally changes her perception of her marriage, revealing it as as a construct of patriarchal expectations rather than a partnership of equals. Her awakening around the understanding that her relationship with Torvald is not based on mutual respect, but on her subservience and his control, which is starkly illuminated when he prioritizes his reputation over his sacrificial act to save his life. Her sacrificial act to save his life. So this basically this paragraph is very essential. It has many very important points. So here we can talk about how, because in the beginning she really loved Torvald, and she would do anything to keep him satisfied, and it wasn't out of fear, it was out of love. Well, of course there was there was some sort of fear because of their power dynamic. He was very powerful, he was the powerful one in the dynamic, but at the same time she did truly love him, and she did truly want to keep him satisfied with her out of love and out of course fear as well. So the fact that she realized that they're not equals, and the fact that them not being equals is not okay, it's not right, it's wrong. So here we can see a change in values, which is part of her anagnorisis. I mean, it's one of the many components for anagnorisis. And the fact that she also realized that he doesn't love her as much as she loves him, because he does not prioritize her well-being and her happiness, but instead he prioritizes his reputation and his image in the patriarchal society, which is a really big problem. And basically, I had another point. So yeah, so instead he does not prioritize her well-being. So it showcases a lot. And not only that, but her act, which will cause like which he's ashamed of and is upset at, was one done in order to save his own life. So if he hadn't been sick, then she wouldn't have had to forge his signature. So again, it shows the hypocrisy as well. The analytical power of Nora's anagnorisis lies in its confrontation with the oppressive structures that define gender roles and individual identity. These are very key themes throughout the play. It compels a re-evaluation of the societal norms that not only dictate a woman's role within the family, but also limit her growth as an individual. By deciding to leave her husband and children, Nora rejects the traditional female identity that society has prescribed to her, symbolizing a break from societal constraints that dictate a woman's worth and happiness must be measured by her marital and maternal status. So at the beginning of the play, we know that and it's evident that Nora's happiness was basically measured by her marital and maternal status, which is why I repeat many times, and I emphasize on the fact that she was doing anything and everything to keep her family alive, afloat, and her domestic life afloat, and maintain her position as a wife in society. Nora's declaration to Torvald and her subsequent departure represent a moment of a profound clarity and resolution. Her refusal to accept anything from a stranger encapsulates her rejection of a life that denies her autonomy and self-expression. This moment, combined with the symbolic custom change and the dramatic door slam, forms the core of Nora's awakening in Adult House. It's a testament to her courage to confront the unknown in her pursuit of a life that allows her to explore and affirm her own identity beyond the confines of societal and marital expectations. To Nora's journey, Ibsen challenges the audience to shed light on the theme of identity. So basically, I'm talking about China crisis, how she came to this realization, and how she had this complete transformation. So now we're going to be analyzing quotes. So the first quote: "Every breath those children take must be filled with germs of something evil, because an atmosphere of lies infests and poisons the entire house." So basically, this quote, I'm just going to give you some context. So basically, this quote is said by Thorvald when he finds out that Nora forged her a signature in order to take the loan. So she illegally took the loan basically from Krogstad. This is when he finds out her secret. Basically, he says, "Every bath those children take must be filled with germs of something evil, because an atmosphere of lies infests and poisons the entire house." So this quote is technically related to the theme of deceit, so keep that in mind. The quote vividly encapsulates the pervasive impact of deceit on the domestic environment, particularly highlighting the damaging personal values held by Torvald. The medical diction used, including terms like germs, infects, and poisons, suggests a pathological view of lies, presenting them as tangible contaminants that sicken the air of the home, thereby elevating moral and emotional corruption to a physical threat. This stark contrast between the aesthetic perfection of the Helmer household and the toxic moral decay beneath its surface reflects the broader theme of public versus private dichotomy in the character's life. Additionally, this imagery underscores the destructive power of deceit, suggesting that dishonesty taints all aspects of life and risks a perpetuating cycle of falsehood even to his children. Thorvald's reaction to Nora's forgery focused on more on his reputation than on his familiar well-being, which I emphasized on previously, reveals his selfishness and obsession with appearances, illustrating his role in in the family's moral decay and creating the destructive effects of patronizing social appearance over the truth and integrity. So here I'm just talking about how basically he starts accusing Nora of being a liar and whatnot, and basically he's just going really crazy on her after he finds out her secret. So the second quote is, "You're speaking like a child. You don't understand the society you live in." So this is individual versus society, obviously. Torvald's response to Nora underscores his unwavering adherence to societal norms. So basically, this is when Nora has her awakening. She wants to leave. She realizes her role in society, and she's out of there. As a character, Torvald does not question the rigid structure of the society in which they live in. Rather, he upholds and perpetuates them. His adherence to these norms is so complete that it blinds him to the personal needs and desires of his wife, viewing them as through a lens tinted by societal expectations. This is very good. If you say viewing them through a lens tinted by societal expectations, you can also talk about the dystopian elements here, because when in like dystopian novels or dystopian settings in general, the views of people are always tinted by some sort of propaganda, but in this case it's the patriarchy. So you can really make the patriarchy, you can show the similarities between the patriarchy and propaganda, and of course dystopian settings. The adherence makes Torvald not just an enforcer, but also a victim of societal ideologies. His inability to see beyond societal expectations traps him within a role that ultimately denies him a deeper connection with his wife. His reactions are dictated by the fear of social scandal and the preservation of his public image, demonstrating how deeply societal norms have influenced his actions. The use of the word child is particularly significant. It infantilizes Nora, so basically makes her seem like she's a child. So showcasing that she lacks maturity, reducing her concerns and actions to mere child's play in the eyes of Torvald. The word choice of reflects a common societal attitude towards women during the period, perceived as less aware of the complexity of the real world. By calling her a child, Torvald not only dismisses Nora's actions, but also asserts a power dynamic where he is the knowing adult and she's the ignorant child. The dynamic is the microcosm of the broader societal structure that seeks to keep women in the subordinate and dependent roles. The quote directly ties to the theme of the individual versus society. Nora emerging desires for independence and recognition clash dramatically with societal expectations of her role as a wife and mother. Thurbert's scolding highlights the societal barriers that individuals face when they attempt to step outside her prescribed roles. So now the third quote, I don't know, but now I'm about to find out. I must find out who's right side here. So basically, this quote was all said in the same interaction or the same what is it? Sorry, the same like dialogue. Yeah, exactly. Use the word dialogue. In the play, she used the word dialogue. So basically, this is in the same dialogue. So basically, she's answering to Torvald. She's telling him, I don't know. So she doesn't know, but she will find out. Nora's determination to find out who is right side to herself underscores the central conflict of the play between societal norms and personal needs. Her choice of word poignantly enhanced this theme. The phrase society or me sets up a direct opposition between the collective and the individual. By using or, Nora establishes a conflict between two mutually exclusive choices, framing her personal identity and the societal identity as being in direct contention. So basically, by using society or me, she shows that it's either her or society who's right, and she's basically individual versus collective. Individualism versus collectivism is basically when she's literally the only one standing against society in some sort of way, because she's the only one choosing to pursue her individual anatomy, especially as a woman. She's not letting society dictate that for her, but she's choosing it for herself, which is basically highlighting and reflecting and underscoring or underlining the theme of identity and individual versus society. So I use all these words that you can write in your essays because these are like really good transition words. Just seeing this clearly like got me emphasized the fundamental theme of individuals struggling against the overwhelming force of societal expectations, because societal expectations, in fact, they are a force. They're really, really, really strong to the fact where they actually blind a person and force them, even if they're not blinded, to follow the patriarchal structure and adhere to it. Hence, the dynamic between Torvald and Nora in the doll's house illustrates the broader theme of individual versus society. Torvald as a representation of societal norms, and Nora as the individual encapsulates the tension and eventual clash that can occur when personal growth and societal expectations diverge. So now quote 4. This is my favorite quote, personally. Here where I've been your doll wife, just as I was Papa's doll child. So this is very, very, very symbolic and strong. So in the beginning, so we have 3 points we're going to discuss. Doll wife and doll child, like these words, like the diction. These terms are central to the understanding the metaphor of the play's title. Nora likens Lincolns herself to a doll, indicating that she has been treated as a decorative passive object both in her father's home and now in her marriage. The repetition of the word doll emphasizes the artificially and superficiality of her expected roles in life. It underscores that her role as a daughter and a wife have been devoid of authenticity, reducing the performance for the pleasure and approval of her father and husband. So basically, she called herself a doll. So basically, it showcases because a doll, they don't have their own like anatomy. They're controlled by whoever's controlling them, whoever's hands they are placed in. So it showcases that she was placed in her father's hands at the beginning and then in Torvald's hands. So basically, it highlights the theme of gender roles and basically that she literally has no individuality whatsoever because they're constantly controlling her. She's their doll and they control her like they want. So basically, it also showcases the cycle that's been created by the patriarchal structure, because as a child she was even a doll. As a child she had her own anatomy, and she didn't have her own anatomy, and then as a woman, so as a girl, she was her father's doll, and as a woman she became her husband's doll. So she never really truly was her own person who made her own decisions, and she's always been treated like a decorative passive object. Transition from father to husband. Nora shifting from being a doll child to a doll wife highlights a lack of agency in her life. The seamless transition, this is a very good word to use, seamless transition, suggests that she has never been given the opportunity to develop an independent identity. Instead, she has been passed from the controls of one male figure to another. This illuminates the patriarchal structure of the society that Nora lives in, where women are perpetually under male authority. The setting, so basically the word here, by using here, Nora specifies the domestic space of her marriage, but it also metaphorically represents the societal and cultural environment that constrains her. The setting has been the stage of her performance, a space that has never truly been hers, but one where she must play roles dictated by others. The last quote, which is also my second favorite, in fact, says the quote, "No, I'm telling you, I take nothing from strangers," said by Nora, serves as a pivotal moment of anagnorisis. So here, if you're analyzing the anagnorisis, you can use this quote, deeply transforming her understanding of her own identity and her marital relationship. By calling Torvald a stranger, Nora not only articulates the profound disconnect between them, it also starkly reveals that her marriage, which she once viewed through lens of intimate partnership, like I said, this is what I talked about in the beginning, how she really loved him truly, has been fundamentally impersonal and transactional. So basically, while she was loving her husband and doing everything to make him not to avoid him from finding out her secret in order to keep the household peaceful, the only thing he truly cared about was his image. And it was completely transactional. Like he just told her, don't even take care of the children at this point. So don't even do your job. So it just showcases that she's a sort of like doll, truly. She's not a sort of, she is a doll that he just uses for his image. This realization is a profound awakening for Nora as it forces her to confront the painful truth that the emotional closeness she believed existed was a facade maintained by her adherence to the submissive and decorative role Torvald preferred. In this moment, Nora not only recognizes her own autonomy, but also initiates a radical act of self liberation, setting a precedent for her dramatic final act of leaving her husband and children in search of a more authentic existence. The narrative arc, driven by her anagnorisis, powerfully challenges traditional societal norms and the roles women were expected to play during Ibsen's time. Okay, so basically, we do know that the book was written throughout the Victorian era, right? Basically, she basically Nora, not Nora, sorry, Ibsen, basically indirectly criticizes the patriarchal structure of society and like the traditional societal roles as he challenges them through the book and through the character and the protagonist of Nora. So now we're going to be talking about symbols. So the title, which we already like analyzed, but we'll continue to analyze. Basically, um, is deeply ironic when contrasted with the traditional notion of a home as a place of warmth, safety, and authenticity. In the play, the home is not a sanctuary of truth and love, but a stage for performance, manipulation, and control. Nora's home is akin to a doll's house where everything is perfect in appearance, yet nothing is what it seems. The house is not a home in a sense, but it is beautifully decorated cage where Nora plays as okay. So basically, you know how dolls are placed in these like cages, that sort of way. So is Nora. Um, decorated cage where Nora plays her role as an ideal wife and mother, confined and controlled by her husband Torvald, who dictates not only how she should act, but also how she should think and feel. Nora is feel. The dollhouse symbolizes the societal and marital constraints placed on women during the Victorian era. Nora is treated like one of her children's dolls, pretty delicate and expected to be content with the superficial happiness of material comfort and appearance. Just as dollhouse is meticulously arranged and is easily controlled by those playing with it, so too is Nora's life meticulously orchestrated by her husband and to a larger extent with the societal norms of the time, because again, Torvald is an embodiment of the patriarchal society. So now we're going to be talking about the symbol of the Christmas tree. The Christmas tree appears during a scene of Nora's eager anticipation for the festive season, symbolizing familial joy and unity, like I previously mentioned, and reflecting her pleasure in creating a welcoming and beautiful home environment. However, by the start of Act 2, the tree is described as stripped of its decorations, with its candles burned down, appearing bedraggled, according to the stage directions. This transformation in the tree's appearance mirrors the deterioration of Nora's naive outlook and ominously anticipates the eventual breakdown of the Helmer family cohesion. A stark contrast between the tree's initial festive adornment and its later desolate state underscore the facade of happiness that crumbles under the weight of truth by the play's end. So now we're going to be talking about the symbols of the macaroons and the tarantella dance. So basically the macaroons in Henrik Ibsen's Doll's House, the seemingly trivial act of Nora eating macaroons becomes a symbol of her subtle acts of rebellion and the concealment of her true desires within her marriage to Torvald. Despite Torvald's prohibition, against her eating macaroons, Nora indulges in them when she's alone, demonstrating an early instance of her defiance against his controlling tendencies. This act of disobedience is a small yet significant indication of Nora's struggle to maintain a sense of personal agency under the constraints of her marriage. So basically, the fact that this is like this, the macaroons basically is one of the small things, but it just really reinforces or just emphasizes on the fact that Torvald really controls the small um like small details of her life. And not only that, but this can also be like interpreted as a sort of foreshadowing, because this takes place at the beginning of the play. So we can just see that she begins by defying him or rebelling at a small scale, but it reaches a point where she actually begins rebelling at a much larger scale by the end of the novel, because she literally leaves the house and no longer really cares about his opinion. And in the beginning, she was terrified of his opinion, and her biggest fear was Croc's dad revealing her secret. So this just actually, the macaroons can be interpreted as foreshadowing, and they can also highlight her anagnorisis to a certain extent. So now the Tarantella dance. So this is the most important symbol in my opinion. So the third dramatic shift is Nora's performance of the Tarantella dance. The scene is a physical and symbolic representation of Nora's internal turmoil and her desperate attempt to distract Torvald from discovering Krogstad's letter. The dance, characterized by its wild and frantic nature, serves as a metaphor for Nora's psychological state, her fear, desperation, and the chaotic upheaval of her carefully constructed life. The paradox of the situation is evident. The pressure on Nora is mounting, yet she must outwardly display enjoyment and carefreeness. Basically, at that point, because literally Crockstead was like literally on the verge of revealing her secret, she was literally having so much internal turmoil. She was literally having a panic attack. She was having so many like internal breakdowns, but she could not show it. So she had to literally do the opposite externally, and she was literally dancing and showcasing how carefree she is and how content she is, and she's having a good time enjoying herself. But in fact, the opposite's happening. So we can talk about how ironic this is, and basically how, yeah, how ironic it is. This scene is a masterful depiction of the conflict between appearance and reality, a central theme in the play. The Tarantella dance in its intensity and desperation symbolizes Nora's struggle against the confines of her societal role and the impending collapse of her world. Furthermore, Nora's Tarantella dance is not only a climax of tension, but also a rich symbolic act infused with Dionysian elements. Dionysian elements in her art and culture emphasize irrationality, chaos, and a primary return to nature, often associated with the emotional freedom, ecstasy, and self-destruction. In the context of Nora's dance, these Dionysian qualities symbolize her inner turmoil and desire to break free from these constraints imposed on her. So basically, we talk about basically Dionysian qualities. The Dionysian aspect of the dance highlights the play's exploration of themes related to the constraints of society, the desire for freedom, and the complex nature of identity. Basically, here they're talking about Dionysian elements. You can talk about that because this is related to like irrationality and chaos, and primal return to nature. So primal return to nature is one of the most important things because she's actually returning to her own individualism and self-anatomy, instead of letting the superficiality enforced by the patriarchal structure to get there. So here you can talk about this is a very, very deep level of analysis. So in order to actually use that, you actually really have to understand the book in its depth. So character analysis. So now we're going to be talking about Nora and Torvald. So Nora is basically the protagonist, who's driven by her anagnorisis. She realizes her own desires and worth, which literally extends beyond her roles and wife as a mother, which has been enforced by the patriarchal society. This moment of clarity prompts her to reject the role of the docile, decorative wife, challenging the patriarchal norms that dictate female compliance. Her assertion of self-determination not only liberates her from the marriage, but also signifies her rejection of the restrictive patriarchal ideology. This key realization marks Nora as a dynamic character, showcasing her evolution from the passive subservience to proactive independence and highlighting the theme of independence. Torvald frequently refers to Nora using terms that signify possession and objectification, such as when he calls her my prized possession and expresses his desire to watch the girl who's mine entirely. So basically, I'm just giving you some quotes. The repetition of mine emphasizes Torvald's view of Nora as a belonging. So basically, he objectifies her, an object of ownership rather than an autonomous individual, which is the whole problem because this whole time it was just transactional between them. He does not take into consideration the fact that she has feelings and she has her own opinions. This lexical choice reflects the patriarchal mindset where women are seen as possessions or trophies valued for their ability to reflect well on their husbands. So here we can just see we just talk about we just like talk at a more deep sense, and we talk about the lexical clusters which really depict Torvald's patronizing character. So here you can just use these quotes as well. They're pretty short, they're pretty good, so they're pretty easy for you to memorize. The juxtaposition of Nora and Torvald's personalities or characters. So Nora's character arc, as highlighted by the aforementioned quotes, illustrate her evolution from a passive, basically the quotes that I mentioned, like quote 4 and quote 5, for example, in the presentation. A passive participant in her own life to an assertive individual who recognizes and rejects the constraints imposed upon her. The metaphor of the singing bird and doll and her declaration of her independence from strangers encapsulates her transformation and the shedding of her imposed identities and the identities. In juxtaposition, Thorvald's static character. So basically, Nora's dynamic, Thorvald's static, meaning a dynamic character is a character who changes throughout the novel, and this is deeply, deeply reflected throughout Nora's anagnorisis, whereas Thorvald is static. He constantly adheres and idealizes the patriarchal views and ideologies, and basically this juxtaposes to Nora's growth and it's and it's a juxtaposition, and it's a way of emphasizing the play's critique of the societal norms and the roles prescribed to women within their marriage. Through Nora's journey, Ibsen challenges the audience to reconsider notions of identity, autonomy, and the capacity for change within the rigid social structures. Character analysis, Mrs. Lind. Mrs. Lind as a point to Nora. So basically, the juxtaposition between Mrs. Lind and Nora becomes particularly evident during the first dramatic shift when Nora reveals her secret. Okay, so basically, before we begin that, I have to just explain what the four characters in case you don't know what that is. Basically, it's two characters who have character traits that basically reflect the differences between one another. So it reflects how different these two characters are. This begins when Nora reveals her secret to Mrs. Lind. This moment not only highlights the difference in their characters, but also serves as a critical point of her reflection for Nora. Mrs. Lind's reaction to Nora's confession, which combines shock with a pragmatic understanding of Nora's predicament, mirrors the complex interplay between societal expectations and independence. Mrs. Lind's pragmatic and survival-oriented approach to life contrasts sharply with Nora's initially impulsive decision, which was driven by desperate desire to save her husband. Okay, so basically here we can talk about how Nora uses more of her intuition. She uses her heart, in other words, rather than her head. So she uses her logic rather than she uses her emotions rather than her logic. Whereas Mrs. Lynn does the opposite. She has a pragmatic and survival-oriented approach, because this is showcased because Nora and before, like at the beginning of the play, she revealed that she basically took a decision which was obviously using her emotions and her intuition to save her husband's life, which was illegal and can get her into a lot of trouble, even with her own husband, despite the fact that she's literally doing a selfless act to save his life. But that's not the case in the patriarchal society. Whereas Mrs. Lynn, she betrays one of her closest friends in order to actually survive in the patriarchal society. Mrs. Lynn's decision to let Roxette send the letters that revealed Nora's forgery can be seen as a betrayal of her friendship with Nora. This pivotal moment is critical in understanding the pressures and constraints faced by women in the patriarchal society, highlighting the theme of gender roles. Mrs. Lynn's actions are driven not by malice, but by a pragmatic approach to securing her own future. Her reconciliation with Crockett and the decision to interfere with his actions towards Nora are influenced by her need for stability and companionship, which she believes can be achieved through rekindling her relationship with Krogstad. This moment highlights the harsh realities faced by women like Mrs. Lind, who are compelled to make difficult choices to ensure their survival in a society that offers them unlimited avenues for independence and security. Mrs. Lind's actions reflect the broader theme of the play regarding the sacrifices and compromises women must make within a male-dominated world. Her betrayal of Nora's trust is a stark reminder of the personal cost involved in navigating the societal structures that often pit women's needs and loyalties against each other. So basically, we're just talking about the patriarchal structure and we're explaining gender roles and the fact that it was a male-dominated world, especially back then. Now we're going to be talking about Krogstad. So Krogstad is a catalyst of Nora's awakening. A catalyst, basically, he sped up Nora's awakening because eventually it was going to happen, whether it was Krogstad or something else. But He's a complex figure whose actions and motivations can be seen as embodying the notion of a two-sided coin. So basically, here I'm comparing Krogstad to a two-sided coin, but without him, Nora and his threatening, initially Nora would not have had her awakening or her anagnorisis. Basically, it's a two-sided coin. Why? So I'm going to be explaining why now. Interestingly, the symbolism behind Krogstad name adds a layer of depth to his character. So the name Krogstad can be loosely associated with the Norwegian word for cricket. In literature, cricket have been symbols of both good luck and foresight, but they can also be seen as omens of darker times, embodying the duality of Krogstad's role in the narrative. So basically, Krogstad has a dual role, which is why I compared him to a two-sided coin. Krogstad is a character who, on one hand, threatens Nora's security by exposing her secret, thus playing the role of antagonist, who brings turmoil to the Henry household as he's constantly threatening Nora and causing her to feel emotional turmoil and fear and anxiety. On the other hand, his actions are driven by his desperate circumstances and the social pressures that he faces. So basically, you can talk about social status, because he's below Nora in the societal hierarchy, yet he still threatens her. And there's actually a quote analyzing that. So this just shows that despite the fact that he's below her in the social hierarchy, he still has the audacity to threaten her. On the other hand, his actions are driven by his desperate circumstances and societal expectations he faces, evoking a degree of sympathy and understanding. The cricket, with its dual symbolism, mirrors Shawkat's complex nature, his capacity to forewarn and disrupt, which is basically what he's been doing to Nora, but also catalyze the change and self-realization within the narrative, particularly for Nora. This duality underscores the nuanced portrayal of the characters and exploration of moral ambiguity that is central to Ibsen's work. Okay, so basically we analyze his character and even his name. Now the dramatic shifts. So the first dramatic shift takes place when Nora confesses to Mrs. Lind. So basically the first dramatic shift occurs when Nora reveals her secret to Mrs. Lind. Her illicit loan to save Torvald's life. This confession makes its significant departure from Nora's earlier portrayal as a carefree and somewhat naive housewife. And the revelation of her decision and independent action in a moment of crisis introduces a complex layer to her character, challenging the audience and the other characters' perception of her. This moment underscores the theme of individual versus society, highlighting the discrepancy between one's public persona and private struggles. Nora's confession to Mrs. Lynn serves as a catalyst for her transformation, settling for the stage for her eventual quest for self-identity and autonomy, which is basically her anagnorisis. Krogstad's confrontation with Nora. So basically, the second shift occurs with Krogstad's confrontation with Nora about the forgery. This scene dramatically alters the play's tone, transitioning from the domestic tranquility of a Helmer household to a tense and uncertain atmosphere. The moods shift from joyfulness to fear, and frustration is palpable as Nora faces the imminent threat of her secret being exposed. This confrontation not only heightens the narrative tension, but also forces Nora into a position where she must grapple with the potential destruction of her family and social standing. Krogstad's presence introduces the external pressure that compels Nora to confront the consequences of her actions, encapsulating the theme of individual society. The dynamic dialogue between Nora and Krogstad, charged with emotion and power struggles reflect the broader societal conflicts and personal cost of societal nonconformity. So basically here, we see the shifts, the many shifts which actually like highlight how it's a dramatic shift. Basically we see the external pressure that Krogstad causes, and the like dynamic dialogue, because basically Nora is more powerful in the fact that she's higher than him in the social hierarchy, but at the same time this doesn't matter because he's threatening her. So we can talk about here like social nonconformity, and basically the mood goes from joyfulness because she's spending time with her family, with her children, to be more specific, to fear. The third and most dramatic shift, because this is the one where Nora has her awakening, the third dramatic shift is the performance of the Tarantella dance, that's seen as physical and symbolic representation of Nora's internal turmoil and her desperate attempt to distract Torvald from discovering Krogstad's letter. The dance, characterized by its wild and frantic nature, serves as a metaphor for Nora's psychological state, her fear, desperation, and the chaotic upheaval of her carefully constructed life. The paradox of the situation is evident. The pressure of Nora is mounting, and she's most outwardly displaying enjoyment and carefreeness. So basically, I already talked about that. So basically, to sum up, we can talk about how The Tarantella dance showcases the intensity and its desperation and like symbolizes Nora's struggle against the confines of her social societal norms and the impending collapse of her world. So here we just talk about the dynamism qualities and basically how the Tarantella dance is the climax of tension, but also like it's very symbolic. So it's a third dramatic shift and symbolism. I think it's the same analysis as the one I previously had. They're very similar, so I don't want to iterate myself. So this is it. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. In this video, I analyzed quite a lot: the setting, the characters, the dramatic shifts, the quotes, the symbolism. It's quite dense. But if you need anything, any help, please comment. If you have any questions, you can always join my Google Classroom in the link below. I'll probably post this PowerPoint there. Thank you so much for watching. And if you I want any classes, any tutoring classes, or whether it's regarding the analysis of the doll class, because I might do a analysis on this for IB paper 2 English. I'll be doing a tutoring session, a group tutoring session soon. So if you want that, and we can also review some sample papers and my personal sample papers. So basically, if you need anything, please comment down below, or you can find my email in my YouTube channel, and you can always directly email me. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much, guys. Bye bye. I hope you liked this video and I hope it benefited you. I know it's quite long, but it's really a deep analysis, so you'll actually get the hang of the book once you watch this video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye, guys.